because you have brought to market curtailment, controllability, underclocking, overclocking, all this stuff that is making Bitcoin mining viewed across the industry as this load resource, this flexible load resource. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dan. It's really quite an honor to have him here tonight to talk about his company, and I'll get out of your way. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Just a quick question for the group, just so I can kind of help put this thing together. How many people here are familiar with Bitcoin mining specifically? Okay, good. So how many people have heard of Foreman before? Another question. Okay, a good chunk. Okay, cool. So my name's Dan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Foreman. This is going to go through a little bit of our history, kind of how we got started, lessons we learned. We started off as some hobby miners, and it became a pretty interesting journey on how we got to where we are today and what the company's going to look like moving forward. Just kind of dive into it. So yeah, we're just going to go through how we got started. We had a little bit of a different start than most people think. We didn't actually set out to start a company. Accidentally started a company is a realistic story. So thankful that everything kind of worked out. We're going to talk about kind of our evolution, so how we went from a hobby project to something that the industry started to use, how that kind of leveled up a little bit, how we expanded our scope to a little more facility management, talk about our kind of how our core objectives as a company changed, and then what we look like moving forward. So to the people that don't know, Foreman is, I guess, probably the market leader on management software for Bitcoin mines. So when you think about a Bitcoin mine, it is just a whole bunch of PCs that are mining Bitcoin, right? It's probably easy to manage one if you've got one sitting on a shelf somewhere. You know the IP address, you can open your browser, you can go to it, you can check on it every day, it's your baby. But if you got 30, 40, 50,000 of them, 100,000 of them, 200,000, it's a little more of a needle in a haystack problem. You don't want to solve it every day. So that's kind of what Foreman does for the industry. We did not start off that way though. That's how we started. Don't focus on the bottom of the rack. Some people might say shitcoins down here, but that's some of our older stuff. So we actually started off GPU miners. Don't tell anybody. Make sure we edit that out of the footage there. We ended up getting into some ASICs, some of the specialized devices to actually specifically mine Bitcoin. There's an Ethereum miner on the side, but we deviated a little bit, but we recorrected course. But realistically, our story is small-scale hobby miners back in 2016 is about when we started. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. My co-founder is actually from Ohio. He lives in Dover. Dover, does that sound right? Yep. I see some head nods, okay. Yep, it's a place. That's a place, okay. Dover, I don't know if you guys know where he's from, but just making sure it's a place in Ohio. And we got into mining, and when you put it in your house, it makes a lot of damn noise. So we had to get it out of the house. My dad, coincidentally, just had a detached garage about an hour away from where I live in Baltimore. It was close to the Pennsylvania line. And we were like, well, I gotta get this noise out of here. So we moved it to my dad's house, hour away. And that is where I got introduced to what it's like to actually be a miner. So focusing specifically on the bottom of that rack, we had some GPUs. We started off very GPU focused. Mining's all about uptime, right? You're racing, you're competing. You're not gonna make as much tomorrow as you did today. So uptime's a big thing, which means that I'm sound asleep one night. I was dumb when I moved the miners an hour away, and they're fragile. They don't stay online all the time. So that's me getting notified around 1 a.m., hopping in the car, driving an hour to manage things. And this is back in 2017, so there was no website you could go to manage anything. It was all desktop applications. Maybe some people use something called Awesome Miner, which is just like a desktop app that works locally. There was one story that actually made us go through this effort where I got in my car, drove an hour up to my dad's house, rebooted everything, got it all back up and running, drove all the way back home, another hour. My co-founder calls me up and says, hey, are you still working on it? No, why? It just went offline. Back in the car, turn right back around. So 4 hours of driving just to fix the same problem twice within a 2-hour window. So we realized that doesn't really work. Nobody wants to drive that much, especially if you're starting off. I think Bitcoin might have been $600 maybe at the time. Uptime was important, but also I don't want to spend a lot of gas because we're self-funding this thing. So driving killed us. So we started off and built a website where we could try to manage the mine remotely. So that's like one of the first pictures of Foreman when we first started it. I'm not a front-end developer. Sonoda's got a much better looking front end than that, I can promise you. But really what we did is, a lot of people don't realize this, a lot of Foreman is based off of a theme that we bought online. So we bought this theme, turned it into a website, made it so we could at least see what's going on remotely. So that kind of at least let me get notified more, unfortunately. But the takeaway from that is that GPU mining sucks. The amount of time that we put towards a GPU rig to mine altcoins accounted for 99% of our time. The right side of the rack, the right side of that image, we realized that people that deploy ASICs, those are a little more cookie cutter. So we made a pivot there. That was our first pivot. So we actually started off GPU focused. We were late to the game. There was already some specialized GPU software out there. It was really just a pet project. But once we realized that you're going to spend a whole bunch of your time on the GPU side because they're fragile, it's not manufactured, it's not mass manufactured, it's not specialized. So we doubled down and committed on the ASIC side. And that's where we actually found some success and kind of took our first risk, pivoted, and tried to see if we can solve a problem for somebody else. So what we ended up building for ourselves was our version of miner management software. So basically trying to just tell ourselves what's online, what's offline, what's hot, what's cold, what's hashing, what's not hashing, what's misconfigured, what's broken, just give us some insight remotely. So now I can be at my house in Maryland or Baltimore, I can see the mine fully remote on a dashboard, and if I need to, I can start to maybe do some reboots. So now if a miner stops hashing, I can click a button on a website. 99% of the time, it's just a reboot that fixes it. The computer's at the end of the day, and if you have a problem with your computer, the first thing you do is reboot it. So that's how you address 99% of the problems with Bitcoin miners. You just reboot them. So that's what we want to be able to do remotely. We also want to be able to do some pool changes. So if I'm going to go ahead and change what pool I'm using or reconfigure it or move it to a different pool, because back in the day, everybody's thinking, man, if I get a better latency, a better connection to this pool, so I'm going to go ahead and move my miners over to here. Oh man, now this pool's promising higher payouts. Doesn't make any sense. But I'm going to move them over here. So we were just chasing pools. So we were able to reboot them, reconfigure them remotely too. And then we got into coal supply chain management. So we built this software and we opened it up to the public, and we had, when you're running Bitcoin mining management software, every day you're going to get customers that are going to reach out to you and say, hey, I've got a 100 megawatt Bitcoin mine coming online. You're going to hear it 1,000 times a day. How many of them do you think actually hit 100 megawatts or even energize? Probably one. 1 in 1,000, I would say. So we had this lead. We finally opened our platform up for some users in maybe 2020 or so. And we had this footer. We still have it there on our website. It says made with heart emoji in Baltimore. And we had this guy reach out and he said, hey, I've got a 100 megawatt Bitcoin mine coming online in Montana. I used to live in Baltimore. I'm going to give you guys a shot. Wow. So we were thinking, okay, sure he is, of course, yeah. That ended up, we ended up winning that pilot, and we got deployed out to this site. The guy turned on 1,000 machines, and we were like, oh shit, we're fucked. We couldn't scale, we couldn't handle it. It was, we learned a ton of lessons right in the moment, because we were building it for ourselves, and we never had 1,000. As soon as somebody brings 1,000 on, you realize you didn't build it right. But we ended up actually winning that deal. We had to, they supported us to scale. And that was our first large customer. We actually hit 100 megawatts out in Montana. So that's about 30,000 machines to give you an idea. And then one day, that site's powered by coal. So one day that customer, what's up?
Is that hard?
It is. So one day that customer reached out to us and said, hey, and at that point when you nail a whale, you hyper-focus on whoever the hell they are. So we said, they reached out to us, and Foreman, we're small scale hobby miners. Everything that we built was never because we needed it outside of the first minimum viable product. I just needed rebooting and pool changing. But they said, hey, we get winter storms that come through in Montana. Montana gets a lot of snow, gets really cold, and it's a coal plant, and they need to truck coal to the site every day, all day to keep the plant running. And when the snowstorms hit, they can't get their supply of coal to the site anymore. So now you can't have 100 megawatts of Bitcoin demand at a coal plant that's only producing 25 megawatts. You can't have a supply and demand imbalance. So they reached out to us and said, hey, can you help us out? Can you basically make it so if we have to run the plant at a reduced production, we can curtail the mine and actually bring the mine down to 25 megawatts of demand rather than having it just consuming 100 megawatts all the time? So we built the very light version of curtailment just for them. So they could click a button, say bring it down to 25 megawatts. We put all the machines to sleep. Did not realize what that was going to turn into. So now we brought flexibility to a large Bitcoin mining load. And then it turned into a life of its own. So automated curtailment took off for us. As soon as, so the way the grid kind of works, it's all about supply and demand balancing. You don't want to have too much demand on the grid without enough supply, because that's when you end up in situations where you've got brownouts, blackouts, the freeze that happened in ERCOT. That was because generation starts to go offline, too much demand, and the grid will shut down at some point. So as soon as you can tell somebody who specializes in grid balancing, demand response providers, suppliers, whoever's focused on the grid, as soon as you can say we have the ability to turn things on and off, it's like a light that goes off for them, because they do that every day, all day for traditional buildings, HVAC, lighting. That's how the grid works. And as soon as you can tell somebody you can turn off 100 megawatts in a minute, light bulbs go off. So that ran through our partnerships with them, and we turned into automated curtailments. Now we can do automated cost avoidance, which means that helping people manage their profitability. So if the price of electricity goes too high, we can automatically shut the Bitcoin mine off to keep them profitable. Peak avoidance, trying to avoid those periods on the grid when the peaks kind of happen on transmission. Your objective is to be off for those. So now we can help people avoid high transmission costs. Demand response automation, so making sure that Texas freeze never happens, or not the freeze, but making sure the grid never shuts down. So now we can pick up those signals, automatically turn mines on, automatically turn mines off to help balance the grid. We got into deregulated and regulated markets, so we work in PJM, MISO, pretty much any North American market you can think of. We also do a lot of stuff in Norway too for frequency balancing. Phase balancing on curtailment, so actually balancing three-phase power, because it's all industrial power, actually balancing the whole thing going down, making sure you're not coming out of phase. Site aggregation, so now this is all just from that one customer. Being able to view multiple sites all together, so now it's not just a problem that we ever had. We had one site, but now you need to have the ability to see multiple sites all on one dashboard, isolate different people, sitemap visualizations, automation. So really just the objective here is to really take the mine, automate it in the market, help it balance the grid, make sure it's only on when it's profitable, and also help operations. So the platform got away from us basically. We were small scale hobby miners, and now we're balancing grids. So that image on the right gets a little more complicated as we go through it. So that's how it started. Maybe we'll go back a slide. Where was it? That's where we were. This is where we're starting to move. And then it gets a little more crowded. So then when you think about a mine, it's more than just the miners on the shelf, just like anything. It's not like when you're automating a building and turning it on and off, you're not just doing lighting all the time. There's cooling, there's HVAC, there's fans, there's refrigeration, there's a whole ecosystem to an entire site. So automating a mine is not just the miners on the shelves. It's cooling fans, it's network switches, integrating with all the equipment. So the objective is to really make the entire thing run as one. It's not just talking to the miners on the shelves. So really our hobby project turned into a large scale management platform, which turned into a facility management platform. So we started to integrate with a whole lot more. So now we're automating grid balancing, automating energy management, and talking to everything at the site now. So the platform's really starting to get very integrated. Here's a lot of the boring stuff that we do now, unfortunately. As soon as you start working with large miners, they have a lot of compliance stuff, inventory, assets, fine-grained access, user management, compliance, historical data. It's stuff that kind of puts you to sleep, but unfortunately it's a part that we get pulled into. This is how the product ended up turning out. It's how it looks today. Very early 1.1, we stole a theme. We actually ended up building our own theme eventually. So this is showing real-time ERCOT load zone west pricing. So this would be a situation where the pricing popped to about $5,000 a megawatt hour. To give you an idea, there's no industry in the world that's profitable at $5,000 a megawatt hour. So what we do is we basically calculate the real-time strike price, so that price where the mine is no longer profitable. So we know, based on these machines, I think this mine has 7,000 machines. I think they're, might be J Pros. It's profitable up to about $78, $76. So as soon as the mine would cross $68, we would automatically curtail it. And as soon as the pricing clears below $68, we'll turn it back on. Turning things on and off, we got really deep into how the facility turns on and off as a whole. So we have this sitemap concept also, which is where you can visualize the entire mine. You can see the racks. So view this as like a container, and you're looking at the rack and you can see all the miners on the shelves. This is showing phase balancing. So if you're turning miners off, you can't just turn them off one. You can't go across the row. You have to turn them off balancing it. So that means one miner comes off phase one comes off phase two, one comes off phase three, another one comes off phase one. You have to balance the three-phase power. So this is actually showing how we visualize it. So this is where that facility orchestration that comes in. So mapping out the phases, mapping out the power. We changed a lot. So we started off hobby miners, we became facility management, we found energy management, and that's where we really fell in love. We love Bitcoin. We're always going to be very Bitcoin focused, but energy management is really our focus, heavily moving forward, providing grid stability and flexibility to large flexible loads, with Bitcoin mining being where we hung our hats. But a lot of people ask us all the time, what is OBM? OBM is our company name, actually. Everybody in the industry knows this as Foreman. OBM, we started back in 2017. Foreman was our product, but as we mature and step into other industries, where's Kevin? We actually are launching a product this month. What month? Are we May yet? No, we're not May yet. We're launching a product late May to actually auto curtail AI loads that are going to be doing training. So actually being able to automatically reduce the power consumption for those during a training process, not for inference, but just for training. So really, the company as a whole has matured from just small-scale hobby mining into energy management as a whole. And you're going to feel, we're going to say this in every talk we give throughout this year, we're kind of going to rebrand a little bit, take it a little off the product. We're not going to be Foreman anymore. It's going to be embracing OBM. OBM, not many people know this story. When we started, me and my co-founder, that mine that we had, that picture of that wire rack in the garage, that was running off of LTE, little cell phone modem. And when you put a cell phone modem inside of a big metal barn, what do you get? You get no service. So I don't know if you guys remember, back when you walk through a mall back in the day, a little kiosk with flashing lights for antennas you could screw on there. And if you talk to a real scammer, they would say, oh man, you put this flashy light on, it's going to give you better service. We tried that. Not the flashy light, but we bought the equivalent of that for this LTE modem. It was like this ridiculous wire thing to stick onto the side of the metal barn. We never got more than 1 bar of service. So we actually started our company. It's the name One Bar Mining is actually how we started. So nobody knows that. Not many people know that. So One Bar Mining is the company name. Foreman was our flagship product. Foreman name will carry forward in other industries, but we're always going to be known as One Bar moving forward. This is where we're focused. So you'll notice the price graph. As soon as it goes red and industries become unprofitable, that's a Bitcoin mine goes off. This would be a more HPC AI building. So you might notice that one gets a little dimmer. Some hydrogen production over here that turns off. And this all happens when the solar stops, the solar and the wind stop. That's what causes the pricing to go high. So I forgot, was it you, Austin, that mentioned a renewable grid? Was it you, Kevin? A renewable grid moving forward. Wind's not always blowing, sun's not always shining, which means that you have to be able to match that volatility on production with flexible loads. So if there's a situation where you have overproduction, you need to be able to turn on flexible loads to consume it. And if there's a situation where you have low production, you need to have flexible loads to curtail, to kind of counter it. So that's why you see the grid pricing go crazy, batteries click on, and it's all around the wind production top right. That's OBM.